Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday, the 19th day of August, 2024. And as we begin a new week, the stories that have come out today with respect to Israel and its future are very, very bleak. Something is about to happen, and we don't know what. Let's look at the stories and find out what's going on. First of all, Antony Blinken, for the ninth time now since October 7th, has arrived in Israel. And he said, this is the last chance for a hostage deal, the very last chance. If you want the hostages home, if you want peace, then take the deal. A former justice minister says the deal proposed today is the worst imaginable. So obviously, Israel won't take it. At the same time, there's a possible Hezbollah drone spotted near Benjamin Netanyahu's seaside home. In fact, there's talk of target assassinations against some of the Israeli leaders by Hamas and Iran coming possibly soon. Even with a ceasefire, and this article is something we have said over and over again, with Hamas, it would do nothing to stop the Hezbollah threat, which is real and it must be dealt with. And finally, to make matters worse, 100,000 plus anti-Israel protesters are expected to show up at the Democratic Convention in Chicago. So again, things don't look good for Israel, do they, on all fronts? All right, here's the headlines. Number one, Blinken. This may be the last opportunity to return the Gaza hostages. Uh, uh, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who arrived in Israel, said on Monday morning he urged both Israel and Hamas not to thwart a deal. This is a decisive moment as he met with President Isaac Herzog in Jerusalem. It is probably the best, maybe the last opportunity to get the hostages home, to get a ceasefire, to put everyone on a better path to enduring peace and security. I'm here as part of an intensive diplomatic effort on President Biden's instructions to try to get this agreement to the line and ultimately over the line, Blinken said in advance of an anticipated summit in Cairo to try to finalize a deal. A senior U.S. official described the Cairo meeting as in-game talks. Qatar and Egypt have been the main mediators for a deal with the support of the United States. So in other words, Israel, you have to take this deal or there will be no deal for a ceasefire or for the release of the hostages. And it's highly unlikely that Hamas would even take the deal. So this is what Blinken is basically saying. You're going to have to take it or leave it. And if there is no deal, here's the worry, of course. Who knows what the U.S. is going to do next with respect to Israel? And that is a real worry. But as our next story points out, herein lies the problem. Former Justice Minister says the deal proposed today is the worst deal imaginable. The new prisoner swap would see just 20 living hostages released in exchange for a long-term ceasefire. Former Justice Minister Chaim Ramon warns offer Hamas to end the war on the condition that all the hostages return at once, and that's what he says they should do. Former Justice Minister Chaim Ramon spoke out against the proposed ceasefire prisoner swap deal, saying it's the worst deal that Israel could possibly agree to. In an interview with 103 FM radio, Ramon said, the deal proposed today is the worst of all worlds. In practice, we will end the war. Anyone who thinks that after 42 days, by pressing a button, we will restart the war is making a mistake. People will return to Gaza, the Gaza border area to the north, and it will be very hard to continue the war, because this is the way that we will happen if we only receive 20 living hostages and not the rest. There is no way that Hamas and Sinwar will implement the second part of the deal, and that is to release the rest of the hostages. Because if you do that, again, why would they agree to that? Because that means the war would continue on until Hamas is destroyed, and they have no motivation to do that. Okay, so in other words, there's no chance that Israel is going to accept this horrible deal for immediate ceasefire. And of course, neither will Hamas. Now, if so, the war would be over and Hamas would have won if they accept the deal. So what are we left with? Basically, we now wait for the response from Iran and Hezbollah. Are they still going to attack Israel militarily? And if so, then to what degree? These are the big questions, which leads us to headline number 3. A possible Hezbollah drone was spotted near the prime minister's residence. His seaside residence, and jets were scrambled. Despite the lack of visual confirmation during the Friday incident, military and Air Force officials have not entirely dismissed the possibility of a small unmanned aerial vehicle launched from Lebanon. Sources confirmed that Netanyahu was not at the residence during the reported incident. Israeli naval forces reported a possible drone sighting off the Mediterranean coast near Caesarea on Friday, raising concerns of a potential Hezbollah surveillance attempt targeting Prime Minister Netanyahu's nearby beach house. This is the story that Iran Hezbollah may institute. There is the story that they may institute target assassinations now, as we just mentioned, on Israel's political and military leaders instead of a full-scale war. In other words, instead of going after the entire country, they may do these targeted assassinations on the lead. Again, we just don't know. Whatever the case may be, there is a real problem that will not go away. And this leads us to headline number 4, something we've been emphasizing for the last 10 months. Hezbollah's terror network poses major strategic threat to Israel that a ceasefire would not solve. Again, as we're going to see, even with the ceasefire, you still have this looming issue on Israel's northern border. The Lebanese-based Hezbollah terrorist group released a video on Friday showcasing what is claimed was a sophisticated underground facility that could be used to attack Israel. The publication came at a time of elevated tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, a few weeks after Israel assassinated Fuad Shakir, senior commander of the group in Beirut. Hezbollah has pledged revenge against the Jewish state, and which has been on high alert in anticipation for the attack. And as we've said, our friends in Israel have said, look, you don't understand how bad it is for us that we're on pins and needles every minute, wondering if there's going to be an attack. Now, the video didn't shock Israel, which has been aware, at least in part, of Hezbollah's extensive tunnel network for several years. And as we saw, the footage showed trucks driving through an illuminated tunnel, showcasing its size and sophistication. A rarity about the video was its translation into English in addition to Hebrew, perhaps an attempt to threaten foreign military forces that had been mobilized to the region in preparation for a possible escalation between Israel, Hezbollah, and Iran. As Israel waits for Hezbollah's retaliation for Shakir's death, there have also been calls for it to carry out a preemptive strike against Hezbollah. And this is what they should do, but this hasn't happened yet. In addition, the assassination in Tehran of Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of the Gaza-based Hamas terrorist group, hours after Shakir's killing, has also stepped up threats from Iran, raising apprehension in Israel. American and British forces have significantly increased their presence in the region, with aircraft carriers, submarines, and other forces mobilized to the area. And here's the key. Hezbollah aims to scare and deter Israel from invading Lebanon, a senior researcher at the National Security Studies in Tel Aviv told the media line. Members of the axis of evil, such as North Korea, Iran, and Hezbollah, are experts in psychological warfare. Throughout Israel's war on Hamas in Gaza, the IDF has uncovered hundreds of tunnel shafts and destroyed many cross-border tunnels. Some of the tunnels were meant to be used as offensive tunnels crossing into Israel from Gaza. Others were cross-border tunnels which enable the terrorist group to smuggle weapons and fortify itself. Here's the key, anyone who has seen the tunnels in Gaza is now aware of what awaits in Lebanon, this expert said. Defense experts believe Hamas's capabilities, and here's the key, pale next to those of Hezbollah, including its tunnels. While Israel has developed technologies to expose the tunnels, there is no capability that brings complete success, he added. That Hezbollah's tunnel network serves a wide range of purposes, from command and control rooms to tactical and strategic tunnels that store some of the group's most sophisticated missiles. And the network is at the core of its war plans against Israel. Now, again, the army has carried out thousands of strikes at an impressive rate, but most of these attacks are close to the border, which likely means they haven't targeted tunnels deep in Lebanon. Now, the UN Resolution 1701, which we've talked about many times, which ended the last war between Israel and Hezbollah in 2006, was supposed to distance the terrorist group from the border, but it did not. UN peacekeeping forces have not stopped Hezbollah from consistently improving its capabilities, transforming it into Israel's most formidable enemy. It is clear that after the October 7th attack that Israel cannot come to terms with such abilities on its border. This is not acceptable. Again, here's the bottom line. A ceasefire is not a solution for the residents of the North. There needs to be some sort of mechanism that would disarm Hezbollah Previous UN resolutions have proven that they cannot achieve it, and they do that. So from 2006 till now, 18 years has been this buildup of very sophisticated tunnels, and Israel has to do something. This points to the unmistakable need for Israel to do something to end this threat. What will it be? We will see. Now, and finally, if Israel didn't have enough problems, here we have this headline: 100,000 plus anti-Israel demonstrators are expected in Chicago. The Democratic convention starts today. They met with a surge of protesters at an estimated 100,000 anti-Israel rioters descend on the city, voicing their discontent with the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris. The protesters, many of whom are rallying against U.S. support for Israel, have already begun gathering near the convention site, sparking significant security concerns. In anticipation of the protests, the Democratic Party has erected walls and installed extensive security measures around the convention venue. The move has drawn criticism, particularly because many Democrats had previously voiced opposition to the construction of walls, particularly at the U.S. southern border. Walls don't work has been a common refrain from Democratic leaders, making the decision to use barriers in Chicago as a point of controversy. A local reporter noted that the increasing security presence around the convention arena, and he said this: "We watched all morning as they have started to bring in more metal fencing, more barricades, and these snowplows that have been navigating around those barricades," the reporter observed. The heightened security efforts emphasize the party's concern over the scale of the protests and the potential for unrest, and literally nobody knows what happened. But the key is the anti-Israel sentiment has again hit the headlines. It never goes away. And wouldn't it be something? This is not impossible that something broke out, a war in the Middle East during the Democratic convention that, again, Biden, Harris, and others would have to deal with. All right. So what we see in these headlines are two major fulfillments of what the Bible predicts at the time of the end will be the case with Israel. They will still exist. They'll be back in their land miraculously, as we've seen, form a modern state. But there'll be a continual search for peace. Sign number 7 of our 25 signs, we're near the end. They will never find peace as a nation, and they haven't since 1948. And then sign 21, they will be continually isolated from the rest of the world as anti-Semitism increases. So this is precisely what's going on right now, and we'll just see what takes place. Again, if you're new with us, our website, Educating Our World, has a book called 25 Signs We're Near the End under the heading of Bible Prophecy, 12 books on Bible prophecy on the website, 65 books in total. They're all free. They're free downloads. We don't sell anything here. And this explains the 25 signs we're near the end, what's going to take place according to Scripture. And as we've seen miraculously, it's all coming to pass right as we speak. All right, so we wait. And so who knows what's going to happen this week? It's a week that we need to pray. We need to be aware of what's happening. And so let's, hit the prayer closet and let's understand what the Bible has to say, because Scripture tells us we can understand the things at the time of the end. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. And until we get back to you later today, may the Lord richly, richly bless.